All right, today what I'm going to do is a master sketch copy of a Cornwell drawing, and I've got it just from this pretty bad printout, but I'm just going to use a Wolf's carbon pencil. This is a 2B. I'm going to use some white chalk, and I'm going to kind of build it, hopefully, the idea that I'm going to build out of the mid-tone, and then I just get a kneaded eraser on, I think it's Canson paper. So one of the cool things about doing it this way is I'm not going to do like an underdrawing, which is very much the kind of classical way, I guess, where you're just drawing very, very slow. When I was in animation, one of the things that we did was we drew fast. And, more in this method, I feel like, there's a kind of divide between doing it fast and kind of gestural, and then a point of accuracy. And not that I take a position on either of them. I think I like both of them, but sometimes it's nice to just kind of get in the studio and just draw. And that's kind of what I'm doing today, just taking and building out, playing with the economy of a line. What can you get with charcoal? You get a different mark than what you would get with pencil, and getting everything kind of super refined. So I'm going to do it lightly, and I'm going to go back and build it, build the drawing up. Now this is something that, again, in animation, we drew in a different way. I come from an animation background, but you can tell that Cornwell he's not doing like a classical atelier kind of style. He's doing more of a, I think they're a lineage of Bridgman, even though I think he studied with Harvey Dunn. So there's just a different, I think, end goal. Not everyone's after the same thing, and one of the things I had to retrain my brain was just that they're just not after the same goal. There's a gestural sense that you're just not going to get if you work in a classical way. That you see something like this. This is much more movement in it. It's looser with the anatomy, but it's still understanding a deep sense of anatomy to then be a little bit more freer with the work. And it's not to say jump right over to this. It's to say go get the deeper sense of anatomy, and this may be a little bit more of like a shorthand. It's not to, I think that's kind of what happens with people jumping right into the Impressionists, where they go, I could just kind of do that thing. And the Impressionists were all versed in, for the most part, and being able to draw really well. Look at that. So you then take and play with the economy of the line, and how to drag it for a line and then push it over for a kind of a scoop for a darker line. And we're describing things with line, even though there's no such real thing as line in nature. But you can see that there's a beauty in what Cornwell's doing here, which he's just taking and carving it. There's a movement even to the line, but you can tell that he building it. A lot of those Bridgman students had a deep, deep understanding. They were working in a faster way. Methodologies for ateliers are much, much longer drawings. 70 hours on a pose. Something I just couldn't wrap my head around before I got into it. But you can see he's kind of finding the data and then building it after. And then using the side to mass in some tone, but this is called graining. He's keeping the graining of the paper, but then he may build up a little tone at the terminator. Right. You can refine that line if you wanted to. An eraser, cart back in. You know, in designing the space, you can see that he's doing that clearly in the way that he's working. There's this in relation to that. Being the caliper vision. Right, and then there's just a form over form. We talked about it a lot, especially when you're animating. You have to be very economical with what you're, attempting to say. With a line, you can kind of build a little bit of a tone by going over it. It's, again, just a Wolf's carbon pencil. Generals are good. I feel like these are just a hair better. Maybe work with some hatching. Go back in now, and you have to remember that he's not copying a drawing. He's making the drawing. So he has this sense of design of what he thinks that the form or the drawing is going to look like. He has a sense to all of his forms. That Cornwell drew it. It's a beautiful thing. I think that's something also in college that we were kind of taught maybe a little bit too early, to have this sense of unique hand in your work. As purely visual, because I'm just making the marks that I kind of see and not quite relating it to anatomy. That's really where kind of a conceptual model may help. Conceptual model is really just to say, there's what I see and then there's what I know. This comes up and in. And if I could put the two together, I'll have a deep understanding. So I'm just not copying light, dark, light, dark. Just going to get a drink. All right. There's beauty of the searching in his drawing too. Just kind of coming up and taking a look here. The lines are, you see the the building of the drawing and the form, and maybe you want to kind of describe the form with the line so it's not so flat. I do think that line can describe it rather than just be flat. Light on one side, dark on the other. It's really bringing this up here. If you want to work on the hierarchy, you can always soften it. I always think there's a back and forth between adding and subtracting. You can see that there's a tone here where he's working with the tone of the paper. And then down here, he's getting into like the white, like really showing that the ground, like that this is just a different value. And he's breaking it up. You can see very linear lines, even in the way he's kind of hatching it. Reinforce the line after. Kind of hear the mark. He's designing. He's drawing the shape, the shadow. There's a lot of like Bridgman. Not Bridgman. Frank Brangwyn. He studied, Cornwell studied with him. A lot of Frank Brangwyn in his work. Way it's kind of stylized. If you don't know him, I'd look him up. You know, you can feel the form. So you can do these all the time. Look at that, he's articulating the Terminator right there. You can do them all the time and do the same drawing over and over until you nail it, and you'll have a nice small little victory. It's not about like perfectly copying either. Like you don't have to put all these like if he's got searching lines, you don't have to put it in this. The whole point is to gain the power and the decision making, not to be mimetic in creating a line and having no idea what it is. Like study it. That's the point of this. Look at why there's a line there. It's searching. You're beginning to consider why, you know. And I think the hat on this guy really tells the story. Let's make this deeper over here. Maybe a little bit more depth over here. Look at the beauty of that line. It's got to be done quickly. It's not just about modeling either. It's really about so much more. He's giving the essence of the character, you know. You know, this aligns here, and if you're not spatially thinking about that, you know, you'll make things too small. Kind of, that's what the caliper vision is, to put the scale in relation to this. There's a point there that as you go up, you know, and then you could take the scale of it and say, if I double that down, something like here is really, is that true? There to there, double that up. So something like, put up a touch. Somewhere about there is where this is. Therefore, you can kind of put it on. Now this is where, when I used to sketch all the time, let's go to the Society of Illustrators and sketch from life. You do these short poses, you're forced to like just go. You can't measure. A lot of the time it's, shorter amount of time to make a decision. Sometimes it's wonderful. And in sketching it, there's an honesty to it, which really shows just what you know and what you need to work on if you're aware and you're conscious and you're thinking about moving towards a goal. All right. It's kind of like you don't want to dress it up yet if it's not in the right place. I think beginners really can't wait to get into rendering the crap out of stuff. And I mean, that's really where painters, when you listen to them, the ones that have provided their knowledge, or, Frank Benson would say that the picture comes together at the end when all of the forms and the things are, you're serving the story in that sense. You're not just serving a rendering need. If you're in service to this story, it's a different concept than just rendering the crap out of stuff. You read those old, like the wisdom handed down. That's why I recommend everyone not just study, but read old manuals and books and stuff like that, just to see what they were saying, if you desire to make work like them. There's a break there. Just shows that kind of rib. So now, if I were to go and do figure drawing or something, I'd be trying to pull from this well of recreation. I don't want to make it. I'm not going to make my version of a Cornwell, but perhaps I'd loosen up a bit after studying one of his drawings. And then I'm maybe even just a bit more bold. Bring this up a little bit. That's it. I mean, that's how I see it. It's not to then go say, like, I want to have the power of Cornwell and now be another version of him. I mean, I see that too often. I think, again, you end up being part two of someone rather than yourself. And I think Oscar Wilde is a great one because he talks about that all the time. People are versions of other people with quotes and all that stuff. And, finding yourself in all of this. What's the extraction? I think that's a harder thing to do, to really, it evokes thought to be able to extract from this and now say, what can I pull from it? Instead of just saying, I have the power of Cornwell. It's like, no, there's something more to it. Look at that, just a handout. Economy, what he's doing with something like that, which looks bizarre if you weren't looking for it to be a hand. Maybe you want to give a tone over the whole thing. That's not even something I got from Cornwell. It's just something I'm like riffing off of the music, in a sense. I guess jazz music is just such a great analogy for it all, where you're consciously aware of things and extracting and pulling. Look at there's even a design in his marks that he's like linear. You know, he's designing the marks much more than I was. Maybe that's again something to take away. That everything has a descriptive quality that's adding to the whole. Oscar Wilde says, "Be you, everyone else is taken." I always love that quote. Tone that down a little bit. You know, and that's a nice little study to just done, even if I just ended it there. I'm going to do a little bit more. Just to kind of place the bottom here. I love these because they evoke a narrative. I'm like, oh, there's a pirate or something. There's something. Why has he got his hand out? What's he doing? So what's fascinating is that Michael Aviano studied with Frank Riley. Frank Riley was a student of Cornwell, and he said he met Cornwell a couple times. A very, very nice man. He said, I think he used to give demonstrations at the Art Students League of New York. There's a beautiful tie to the Art Students League of New York with, rich history. And Michael was teaching there. Michael's still... he's 97 now, still alive, and just a wealth of knowledge when you talk to him. Very humble and quiet, but plenty to say. And, I think there's a beauty in taking and listening to those that know more than you. I think everybody does about something, and to kind of listen to what he has to say. Also studied with, I think, Alex Raymond, because he wanted to be a illustrator back in the day. So anyway, I think that's probably a good place to stop. It's not perfect to the Cornwell. It doesn't have to be. But the question is, take it away and then look at it as its own thing and hang it in your studio and remember the experience of having put it together. What did you take away? So these are things that I was doing back in the day, kind of pulling the line, seeing what you can get with a stroke. What can you do quickly, and then go take what I just kind of extracted from this now into your own practice.